There comes a moment in some people's lives when solitude stops feeling like punishment and begins to reveal itself as transformation. What once felt like emptiness slowly becomes a silent space where something entirely different starts to grow. Carl Jung believed that many of the deepest psychological changes do not happen in crowds or during moments of external success. They emerge in isolation, when the distractions disappear and the unconscious finally has room to speak. Most people fear loneliness because they interpret it as evidence that something is missing. Jung suggested the opposite. Sometimes, loneliness is the psychological environment required for the birth of a stronger self. Modern society constantly teaches us to escape silence. Notifications, entertainment, endless conversations, and the pressure to always appear socially connected make genuine solitude seem abnormal. But beneath that noise lies a profound question. What happens when you stop running from yourself? Jung argued that the individual who dares to remain alone long enough eventually confronts the hidden dimensions of the psyche, the forgotten emotions, the rejected desires, the buried fears, and the unrealized potential that daily life keeps hidden. This confrontation is uncomfortable, yet it is also where psychological maturity begins. In this video, we will explore 5 powerful signs that your loneliness is no longer weakening you, but transforming into psychological strength. These signs are subtle, often misunderstood, and may even make you feel different from the people around you. Yet, according to Jungian psychology, they indicate that your mind is becoming more integrated, more resilient, and less dependent on external validation. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, your solitude may not be a problem waiting to be solved. It may be the quiet beginning of your greatest psychological evolution. Silence no longer feels empty. The first sign that loneliness is becoming psychological strength is that silence stops frightening you. At first, silence feels oppressive because it removes the distractions that usually keep uncomfortable thoughts hidden. Many people immediately seek music, social media, conversations, or constant stimulation because they cannot tolerate hearing their own minds. Jung believed this reaction reveals not strength but avoidance. Silence forces us into direct contact with the unconscious. As time passes, however, something remarkable begins to happen. The silence no longer feels like a void demanding to be filled. Instead, it becomes a space where thoughts naturally settle. The endless mental noise starts losing its grip, and beneath it appears a quieter awareness that had always existed but had been drowned out by constant activity. Loneliness gradually shifts from deprivation to presence. Jung often described the unconscious as communicating through symbols, intuitions, emotions, and subtle psychological movements rather than loud logical arguments. These signals are almost impossible to notice in a life filled with continuous distraction. Solitude creates the internal conditions necessary for these deeper messages to surface. Instead of feeling abandoned, you begin to feel connected to parts of yourself that were previously inaccessible. Many individuals mistake this transformation for emotional numbness. In reality, it is often the opposite. You become more emotionally aware because external noise no longer dictates your attention. You notice small emotional changes, hidden motivations, recurring dreams, and intuitive impressions that once escaped your awareness. Psychological sensitivity replaces emotional chaos. This growing comfort with silence also changes your relationship with boredom. What once seemed unbearable gradually becomes fertile ground for creativity and reflection. Instead of rushing to escape quiet moments, you become curious about them. The mind starts organizing itself naturally when given enough uninterrupted space. Jung believed that genuine individuality requires periods of withdrawal from collective expectations. When silence becomes comfortable, you stop measuring your worth according to constant social engagement. Your identity begins forming from internal values rather than external reactions. This marks one of the earliest stages of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole. There is also a growing sense of stability that emerges. You discover that your emotional balance is no longer entirely dependent on other people's attention or approval. You still appreciate relationships, but your inner world develops its own foundation. Solitude becomes a place where you recharge, rather than a condition you desperately try to escape. When silence transforms from enemy to companion, loneliness has already begun changing its psychological meaning. What once represented isolation now becomes evidence that your mind is learning to stand on its own, capable of finding peace without constant external reassurance. You stop chasing constant validation. The second sign is more subtle, but often more powerful. You gradually lose the compulsive need for other people to confirm your value. Modern life encourages constant comparison, making self-worth dependent on recognition, praise, and social acceptance. Jung warned that identifying too strongly with external approval distances us from our authentic personality. Loneliness initially exposes this dependence. Without continuous feedback, many people feel uncertain about who they are. They question their attractiveness, intelligence, success, or importance because the mirrors they relied upon suddenly disappear. This uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it reveals an important psychological truth. Much of their identity had been borrowed from others. As psychological strength develops, this dependency slowly weakens. You begin evaluating your decisions according to your own principles instead of waiting for collective approval. This shift does not happen through arrogance, but through deeper self-knowledge. Confidence gradually replaces validation-seeking. Jung described the persona as the social mask we wear to function within society. While necessary, the persona becomes dangerous when it completely replaces the authentic self. Loneliness often strips away this mask because there is no audience left to impress. What remains is the individual behind the performance. This process can feel unsettling because it forces you to ask difficult questions. What do you actually believe? What do you genuinely enjoy? Which ambitions truly belong to you, and which were adopted to satisfy expectations? Solitude gives these questions space to emerge honestly. As your answers become clearer, something changes in your relationships as well. You stop trying to be universally liked. Instead, you become more selective, valuing authenticity over popularity. Fewer relationships may remain, but those that survive often become far deeper. Psychological independence does not eliminate the desire for connection. Rather, it transforms the reason you seek it. You no longer connect with others to escape yourself. Instead, you connect because your inner life has become rich enough to share without sacrificing your identity. This is one of Jung's central insights. The more complete an individual becomes internally, the less desperate they become externally. Loneliness no longer threatens your sense of worth because your identity has developed roots that extend far beneath public opinion. Your emotional reactions become less automatic. The third sign is emotional transformation. Most people believe strength means suppressing feelings. Jung proposed something entirely different. True psychological strength emerges when emotions are understood instead of blindly obeyed. Loneliness provides repeated opportunities to observe emotional reactions without immediately acting on them. Anger, sadness, anxiety, jealousy, and fear still arise, but there is gradually more space between the emotion and the response. This space is where consciousness begins expanding. Jung believed unconscious complexes often seize control without our awareness. A single criticism may trigger childhood wounds. A rejection may awaken forgotten insecurities. Without reflection, these reactions appear automatic and unavoidable. Solitude allows these hidden mechanisms to become visible. Instead of asking, "Why am I feeling this?" you begin asking, "What part of me is reacting?" This subtle shift changes everything. Emotions become sources of information rather than enemies that must be eliminated. As this awareness deepens, emotional storms lose much of their destructive power. They still exist, but they no longer define your identity. You experience feelings without becoming completely consumed by them. Psychological flexibility replaces emotional rigidity. You may also notice increased compassion toward yourself. Rather than judging every painful emotion as weakness, you recognize it as communication from the unconscious. Each emotional response becomes an invitation to understand yourself more deeply. This process strengthens resilience because it reduces impulsive behavior. Decisions become less reactive and more intentional. You gain the ability to tolerate uncertainty without immediately seeking relief through distraction or unhealthy habits. Jung saw this growing emotional awareness as essential to individuation. A mature personality is not one that feels less, but one that relates to feelings with greater consciousness. Loneliness often becomes the quiet training ground where this emotional maturity develops. You become comfortable facing your shadow. One of Jung's most influential ideas was the shadow, the hidden aspects of personality we reject because they conflict with the image we want to present. Loneliness often brings these forgotten parts into awareness. At first, this encounter can be deeply uncomfortable. You notice jealousy you denied, fears you concealed, ambitions you suppressed, resentment you never admitted, or vulnerability you tried to hide. Many people immediately escape back into constant social distraction to avoid this confrontation. But psychological strength grows when you remain present. Instead of denying these traits, you begin observing them with honesty. You recognize that acknowledging darkness does not make you a bad person. It makes you a more conscious one. Jung insisted that whatever remains unconscious eventually controls us from behind the scenes. By bringing the shadow into awareness, you reduce its unconscious influence. Integration gradually replaces repression. This process often produces unexpected freedom. You become less defensive because you no longer need to maintain an illusion of perfection. Mistakes become opportunities for understanding instead of threats to your identity. Relationships improve as well. The more you recognize your own hidden flaws, the less likely you are to project them onto others. Judgment decreases while empathy increases. You understand human complexity because you have witnessed it within yourself. Shadow integration also unlocks hidden strengths. Qualities once rejected, assertiveness, creativity, ambition, sensitivity, independence, may have been buried simply because they conflicted with childhood expectations or social conditioning. What seemed like darkness often contains enormous psychological energy. Loneliness becomes valuable because it offers uninterrupted time for this inner dialogue. Without constant external performance, the hidden self gradually reveals itself. According to Jung, psychological wholeness is impossible without integrating the shadow. The individual who courageously faces their inner contradictions becomes stronger, more authentic, and far less vulnerable to unconscious self-sabotage. Your solitude feels like freedom rather than isolation. The final sign is perhaps the clearest of all. Solitude no longer feels like something happening to you. It becomes something you consciously value. This does not mean you reject relationships or stop enjoying companionship. Instead, your happiness no longer depends entirely upon constant social presence. You discover that being alone and feeling lonely are not the same psychological experience. Jung believed individuation inevitably creates periods of separation from collective thinking. As your values become increasingly authentic, you may naturally outgrow relationships built only upon conformity or superficial approval. While this transition can feel painful, it often creates space for deeper, healthier connections. Freedom begins appearing in unexpected ways. You make decisions more confidently because they reflect your genuine convictions rather than social pressure. Your daily life becomes less driven by fear of missing out and more guided by inner purpose. Creativity often flourishes during this stage. Without constant comparison, original ideas emerge naturally. The unconscious contributes insights that rarely appear amid endless external stimulation. Many artists, philosophers, and psychologists have described solitude as the birthplace of their most meaningful work. There is also a profound reduction in psychological dependency. You no longer require constant reassurance that you are enough. Your self-respect grows from internal alignment rather than external applause. This inner freedom changes how you love others. Relationships become choices rather than emotional necessities. You appreciate people without needing them to complete your identity. Ironically, this independence often allows deeper intimacy because it removes fear-driven attachment. Jung believed the goal of psychological development was not isolation, but wholeness. Wholeness allows genuine connection because it is built upon authenticity instead of dependency. Solitude becomes the workshop where this transformation quietly unfolds. When loneliness evolves into freedom, you realize something unexpected. The greatest strength was never learning to live without people. It was learning to meet yourself completely, without running away. Carl Jung believed that the deepest psychological transformations rarely announce themselves with dramatic moments. They unfold quietly, often during seasons of solitude that seem meaningless from the outside. If silence comforts you, if validation matters less, if your emotions become more conscious, if you face your shadow with honesty, and if solitude now feels like freedom rather than abandonment, your loneliness may already be evolving into psychological strength. The path of individuation is not about withdrawing from the world forever. It is about returning to the world as someone who is no longer controlled by fear, approval, or unconscious patterns. Solitude is not the destination. It is the place where a stronger, more authentic self is patiently formed. If this exploration of Jungian psychology resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and join us for more deep insights into the unconscious, shadow integration, and the lifelong journey towards psychological wholeness. Let us know in the comments, which of these 5 signs have you experienced in your own life?